from the office, and I didn't have a chance to get nothing to write with.
There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, isn't there?
Yeah, I got me some loose sheets of paper. I'm ready to go.
All right.
Copy down everything y'all say.
Okay.
We hear anything from the trash can lady?
Let's see,
Does that include
the base.
the base that goes in the ground?
I think so, yeah. That one that I had at the meeting on Thursday, I think that's the base too.
Okay, because it said portable.
Portable, I think that's the base. I never did confirm with her if that means that it can be picked up and taken. You know what I mean? Cause I guess once it's in the ground, it's in the ground. It shouldn't be portable unless she's talking about the trash can itself being able to come out of that base.
Yeah, well, I know you can move that.
I
But just,
don't know.
you know, I just like to make, cause I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna bring it forward.
Okay.
To
I'll
vote
check,
on.
let me,
And
here,
I
I'm
just,
making
I mean, I don't wanna pay shipping and handling,
that's right. If it ain't the
then
right
be
thing.
the wrong thing.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll confirm with you.
Yeah, need to know. Need to know for sure.
I'll confirm with it.
Mr. Rigsby gonna do this?
He's gonna be late.
Yeah.
He gets off work at 5 o'clock, and I don't know where he's driving from.
You gonna work in Randolph County?
Wentworth, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know. He won't be too late, I doubt.
Let's get this thing going.
Call to order. It is November the 1st, 2022. It is 5:15, and we're having a workshop meeting for our water system. The town council is here, all but Jim Rigsby, who will join us later. Mr. Jones, would you be kind enough to do our invocation?
Yes, sir, I can. If you would, bow your heads, please. Lord, we thank you for all your many blessings. Thank you for the opportunity to live in Stokesdale. I ask you to lead, guide, and direct all of us, and especially this council. We ask for to lift up the little girl and the family that was in the terrible accident on the Hall River Road last night. And Lord, if it just would be with everybody, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Workshop. Mr. Foy, do you have anything to start us
No,
with?
I just want to thank Tim for his kind prayer and for recognizing Aaliyah Thornhill. I came home after work and changed clothes, or changed my shirt to come here, and they were doing a feature on the news of her, and she just beautiful girl, and it just a tragic incident. So her name's Aaliyah, and we certainly remember her. You know, from a water workshop perspective, I think, you know, going forward, if we're going to continue to have these meetings, we said, you know, we would obviously work with each other's schedules, and we probably should have this meeting at 5:30 going forward, as Jim does work to 5 now in Rockingham County. So when he gets here, we'll get his input on what works best for him. And always, if 5:30 or 5:45 doesn't work for canceling later in the evening, I'm flexible. Well, you know, the intent of having it at this time was, of course, so we could have vendors and also staff available at this meeting. So these are important meetings, and I think we've had some good discussion. Picking up from where we were on our last meeting, I feel like if our discussion was around the roughly $4.2 million that we have available through either House Bill 1163 or the ARP money via Guilford County, council had a lot of good discussion about, I guess, running a parallel trunk line that would supplement Highway 158 into the core of Stokesdale. And we would do that via Coldwater Road to Highway 65 and connect there to Oak Level Church Road. So with that, I believe we did have good discussion about that, And if council's had additional thoughts or things about that, you know, Tim couldn't be with us last time, but I have so much respect for Tim's opinion on anything, but especially anything water. Would certainly like to hear Tim's thoughts about that. Not to put you on the spot there, Tim, but you know what I mean.
Thoughts about what?
Trunk line from our existing main, down Coldwater Creek to 65,
Coldwater Road.
I'm sorry, Coldwater Road.
Yeah, well, I almost feel like this money we've been granted is a double-edged sword, but I want us to put our heads together and be sure we're making the best use of it. I don't like the idea of spending it in another jurisdiction. And that Coldwater 65 corridor is I guess, the last major segment of town that's not really served by our water system. We're pretty close in the other corners. The other place that we might look at, in my opinion, is any extension east on 158 through our industrial zoning, you know, down from Southern Road going towards 220, you know, somewhere along in that area there, assuming we don't run afoul of any highway planning that's taking place. And so I tend to favor the idea of the 65 Coldwater Loop with the caveat that we have sufficient supply and pressure to service that area. But I think the first place to look to spend this money is on a aeration system for our elevated tank and a control valve for our pressure reducing valve, as per the recommendation of Hazen and Sawyer in the last the $84,400 study they did for the town of Stokesdale. So those are my opinions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have that already in progress.
We do not in my opinion.
We do not.
We talked about it.
I would say this, and I agree with Tim wholeheartedly on the pressure reducing valve. I believe I'm saying that right. And I would say this, without knowing for sure, we would get that additional $400,000 grant from the Department of Water Infrastructure. But we have applied for that, and I feel confident in our grant application and the merit behind it. We just don't know if we're gonna get that money at that time, and probably won't know until maybe the early spring. With that being said, while acknowledging the importance of that project, I believe that $400,000 grant could really go specifically towards that control valve, Tim. So and it could not be used, my understanding, it could not be used for water line extension. Aaron may be able to help us out with that, but I'm just trying to put these in order,
Well,
how we've got to spend the money.
wherever those parameters are, I think it's essential that we pursue an answer to those questions, and so council will have that available before making any more decisions regarding the use of this money. I think the consensus is, from at least what I've gathered from Mr. Babson and our own Robbie Wagner, is that we don't have a contamination problem that we need to address with this money. We can't seem to get completely to the bottom, going backwards as to exactly what caused the contamination, exactly where it's at, but we, I think, have made a really good faith effort to contact higher government about this, including the state of North Carolina and Guilford County, the Guilford County Health Department, and made every attempt to get any and all information there is available so we could take that into account with any short and intermediate planning we're doing. So I'm satisfied, and I appreciate council's support. It's just a loose end that I wanted to be sure we pursued.
Thank you. And Robbie, also thank you for all your hard work on that.
Absolutely.
I know you were chasing down, probably at times it felt like you were chasing down a ghost trying to
Yeah,
get
well,
answers, but
that's okay. I would rather.
You got it and you knocked it out, man.
No problem.
You know, if everybody could just, you know, kind of jot down some dates, you know, so here it is, November 1st, and, by 6/30/23, we have to have $1.1 million encumbered by a project. So, I mean, you know, the town council, it sounds like we're getting close to, you know, getting a lot of traction on the Coldwater to 65 connection, if you will, or Oak Level, Church Road. So, I mean, I guess that's the first step, right? Making a decision of what we want to do. But then there becomes, you know, some pretty complex steps that, you know, quite frankly, and Robbie, no offense, but, and no offense to any of y'all either, but I don't think any of us really have the acumen to, you know, really understand what it takes to do the RFQ process and RFP process to get this ball rolling. And, you know, and that's only natural to be expected in a limited government operation with small staff. But these are important things, and we don't want that deadline to come upon us on that $1.1 million. I think it'd be prudent if one of us talked to the state, and I meant to do this this week, I just have not done it yet. Our contact there is Abby Gack through for this $1.1 million House bill.
Sir, you want to take a shot at spelling that for me?
I believe,
GNATT.
Excuse me?
I think it's GNATT.
Nat, Abby Nat.
well, Robbie, we're talking with a few Abbeys, so I want
Oh.
to make sure.
That's right.
We're talking with an Abby Gosling from the county.
That's who I think.
That's who we had a teleconference with.
That's right. Let me look at my calendar.
Well, I do know her name's Abby, you know, and she works with the state. I think we need to engage her and where we are in this process, and you know, just make sure she's on board and conveys any information to us about, you know, how we secure that $1.1 million. And Abby, or excuse me, Robbie, I'd be glad to talk to her. I'd like for, you know, either you or Kim to make that introduction from a staff level
Okay.
here.
Yes.
You know, the big question I have with them, and also have with anybody in this project, is will this funding be a reimbursement or upfront funding?
Gotcha.
And the town, it would behoove the town if we're able to present a project with a number and we get upfront funding.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, not to imply that we're cash poor, but our cash is tied up in assets that aren't, you know, it would penalize us to liquidate them in
That's right.
CDARS. So
That's right.
getting the money up front is what the town wants.
Gotcha. Whole lot easier. I understand. Yeah.
So we need to get to the point where we can make the decision on what we want to do and then request bids.
You know, Mike,
Are those not the steps?
yeah, I mean,
We need to decide what our goal is and then pursue some sort of engineering opinion, a feasibility study, everyone you want to call it. And then if that's if it seems feasible, then we would go to the point of paying someone to design the project. Then once that's done, we would be in a position to put those plans and specifications out for a bid. And then we would have to have someone, of course, monitor that project on the town's behalf, and then pay all the bills.
Is this something Aaron can do? Is this something your company does?
actually, Aaron, just take a seat.
Is absolutely something that Hazen can do, but
Make sure we're getting you.
yeah,
You can move it over if you need to.
yeah. So it's absolutely something Hazen can do, but in this case, because you're dealing with the funding money that's, the funding from the state that's part of the ARPA, and the earmarked funds, it would need to go through uniform guidance and issue the RFQ to select your engineering sources. And that would need to be done on a qualification-based selection, per the Mini Brooks Act, if it's over $50,000, which in this case, this project likely would be.
We, in the past, council has voted to exempt us from the Mini Brooks Act. Does it have to be done on each occurrence, or is it in effect until such time as it's revoked by this council?
Mr. Jones, I would suggest you talk to the
That's a
School of
legal
Government.
question.
That's a
Well,
legal
yeah,
question that I
well,
can't
you know,
answer.
you brought it up.
My understanding is that any professional-based services, engineering, surveying, accounting, things like that would need to be done. That selection over $50,000 would need to be under a qualification-based selection as part of the RFQ process.
So,
Help me out
so
on
if I
that.
understand you, what you're saying, if I understand Aaron, what you're saying, yes, your company, of course, can do the engineering work and a lot of services that Hazen and Sawyer, of course, does globally. But because this is state money and where the money comes from, you are not really able to speak beyond, this must go through the Uniform Guidance Act and then, kind of like that. I don't want to put you on a spot in this meeting by asking.
Yeah, of course. No, I can't, well, so this is a legal question that needs to go
Okay.
through your attorney. It needs to go through I would suggest calling Rural Water. I would suggest calling the School of Government. They can both help you with this process. What I would say, the Mini Brooks Act applies to all engineering services, not just because of where this funding source is coming from, but what is required by this funding source specifically is that you will put your funding at risk should you not go through uniform guidance.
So we don't have discretion. We can't just choose Hazen.
That's correct.
Unless that exclusion can be applied.
Yeah, as part of it, unless it's
The
part of the
exclusion that was
competitive
previously
process.
voted
Yeah,
on.
yeah, if, for those that may want to dig into this, based on my very, very limited knowledge about the subject, the Brooks Act was something passed by Congress, and then in turn, the state of North Carolina passed a tag-along legislation, or add-on legislation, commonly referred to as the Mini Brooks Act. And I know the town council in the past has voted to exclude us from that. There's an option in the statute that allows this, or exempt us from it. So I don't know if the exemption is still in the past, it was a one-time occurrence thing, or whether it's continuous. So, we need to get Mr. Medlin to help us with that.
We definitely would, and a concern just at face value I would have, if there is a part of the statute where we would be exempted, would we also exempt ourselves from getting federal or state funds for this project?
Oh, absolutely.
So-
Yeah, we just,
So.
need to be
yeah.
conscious of what we don't know. And also, while we're on the subject, I have a concern about all the fine print that may come with accepting this money, whatever that may be, how it may impact our, how we budget money, how our land use, how the town's operated in the future. If the state's the 300-pound gorilla, I don't know what the federal government is to us, but we're certainly just a very tiny entity in the total scheme of things, and I am concerned that we may be accepting this money with strings attached, that we may not know what those strings are if we're not careful.
That's a very real concern. I don't perceive that to be the case, but that's a very legitimate concern.
Who do we talk to at the state? Abby Nat, is that the person we begin with?
Let's just say Abby. I got her name somewhere in my email.
Okay.
But yes, we do have a contact for the $1.1 million. That's the source there.
All right.
We also have a contact through the county, our liaison through the county, who's really going to be with us for the next 2 years. Her title is Budget and Fiscal Recovery Office, I believe. That's right. Abby Gosling, and the mayor and Robbie and I had a great meeting with her. So yeah, so we'll be working with two Abbeys. So the one with the state, Mike, is the $1.1 million. The one with the county is $3.3 million.
If I could, Mr. Foy, I mean, who you and the mayor meet with is really, glad y'all putting the time in, but what is a reasonable way for you to keep the rest of council informed about these meetings with, the county and the state regarding these funds? How can we organize that in such a way that council stays informed of who's meeting with who and why?
If you could take a look at the 2-page email I sent regarding the meeting, and if that's not sufficient, I don't know what else I could possibly do.
You think I have this email? I don't readily recall reading it, but I'm not saying I didn't get it. I'll go back and look for it.
Maybe I didn't hit send. Did any of you other guys get
I
it?
didn't get it, and I was in the meeting. I didn't, and I looked for it. I did not get it.
So sometimes staff will inadvertently send email just to my town email address that I've never used and I don't intend to. So, but I was just checking up, see where it might be.
What I try to do, Tim, is like I've got a meeting Thursday with the county commissioners. They invited all the mayors to come in and hopefully get money. I hope that's what it's all about, but it's just basically to see where we stand as towns. And that meeting is at 3:30 in the old, it's a Truist building now. It's the old BB&T meeting, BB&T building. If you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome. But I put those in emails. I copy everybody that's on the council on that. So if you're not checking those emails from the town, and I also use my personal from time to time, but when I do that, it's.
Well, I'm not intentionally skipping over it. I'm just reminding
I understand.
anyone that's meeting with any officials about this, three of us can't go anywhere without it being a public meeting law violation. So if two are handling this, and I'm glad you are, I appreciate it, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that, we need to try and keep a whole council on the same page as best we can. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, so.
Let's do that. Let's one up that. For public record, I'd like for Robbie to reference the email that I sent on Thursday, October 27th at 3:55. Please reference the email addresses that I sent that to, and then if you could please read my email.
You want me to read it right now?
That's correct.
Absolutely. Let's see, so Derek sent an email to, let's see, this was the ARP grant money with the county, quick notes and summary from meeting. This was to Mayor Mike Crawford, Councilman Tim Jones, Councilman Jimmy Landreth, Councilman Jim Rigsby, and himself as Councilman Foy. He copied me as deputy clerk, Ms. Kimberly Thacker, Mrs. Martin at the Stokesdale Town Hall email address, Priscilla at the Water Department email address, and Mr. Medlin at his new Hagan Barrett email address. And again, that was on Thursday, 10/27/2022 at 3:55 p.m. And his email said, all quick update from the conference with the Guilford County Fiscal Recovery, Abby Gosling yesterday. 30-minute meeting occurred yesterday, 10/26/22 at 4 p.m. Crawford, Foy, Robbie were present at Town Hall. Abby participated virtually via Microsoft Teams. Objective discussion was for the county to see where all of the water projects and to review the next steps in terms of administrative paperwork and ultimately getting funded. I told them that I thought that we were close to understanding what we were going to do and that it would be many commonalities to what was presented to the county initially to get the money. As far as securing the money, the $3.1 million, someone with the town needs to review a PowerPoint presentation regarding ARP funds prepared by the county and sign that it has been reviewed. I can do that from council, and I would like for Kim to do this as well. We should get a link for this presentation from Amy Addington. In the near future, Abby would like additional information on our projects in writing. She will use this to work with their legal and purchasing team. Robbie will follow up with her to secure what exactly is needed. From there, this goes back to the commissioners for them to sign, assuming we'll have to sign something after that for everything to be final. She would like to secure approval from the commissioners at their workshop on December the 15th. She mentioned that funding would be available on January 1st, 2023 or thereabout. Money must be obligated by 12/31/24, and spent by 12/31/26. Her suggested disbursement schedule to Stokesdale was the county reimbursing us for the cost of the projects. I told her that it's not ideal for us, as we could run into cash flow problems with the kind of initial cash outlays later to be followed by reimbursement. I shared that other small towns in the county would likely have those same problems. She said that we would work something out to address that concern. Abby will be our point of contact through the process. Lastly, apparently we need to sign some kind of resolution regarding how our ARP will be applied. It's vague but required for all municipalities. I'll look into that and get it on the agenda for our next meeting on November the 10th. She said that she would send me, Robbie, an example from the School of Government. Call with questions. If not, we'll discuss during the 11/1 meeting. Derek?
Okay, what was this, how's that identified in the subject line?
Let's see, it's identified as ARP grant meeting with the county. Quick notes summary from meeting.
October 27th.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there any recommendations that council has for me that I could do better to encourage you to read my emails?
I don't know, maybe address it, hey, stupid, or,
Possibly.
you know.
Well, Mr. Foy, I apologize, but given the volume of email I receive just from the town.
I understand.
and now-
Apparently it wasn't just
wait-
you.
Wait a minute now, doggone it. I'm also have to conduct my own business, and I'm in a lot of places during the day with a lot of things on my mind, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. And we come down here to these meetings and we we work on things and then we set it down, and then the 5 council members, we have to disperse and go back to life.
Absolutely.
And then, another week or two passes and we have to come back down and pick up and start anew again. So it was not a complaint. It was just simply a reminder that the more we could organize these communications into some coherent record, the easier it'd be to refer back to them. I was not complaining. I'm appreciative of you and the mayor doing this.
Well, I mean, I'm guilty too. I've got it. I found it. I remember reading it now. But when it was brought up earlier, I didn't have any recollection.
Moving forward and taking some of the to-dos from that email, to get this money, it was said in the notes from that meeting that an Amy Addington would send a presentation to Robbie or myself. I have not received one.
I haven't
Or
either.
a presentation for us to review, and that's part of getting this money. So maybe if you could jot down, follow up with Abby tomorrow on see where we were with that presentation.
I'll sit in on it. I don't mind. And you suggested Kim as well?
Anything that has to do with finances, Kim needs to absolutely be involved with.
Okay.
So I would insist that she review that and sign any
So we've
necessary
got
paperwork.
Abby, and Addie.
That makes it easy, don't it?
No problem.
In the near future, Abby would likely additional informations on our project in writing. She will use to work with their legal and purchasing team. Then I said, Robbie will follow up on her to secure what exactly is needed. So if you could, Robbie, could you please tomorrow
Abby.
follow up with Abby
Yep.
on that? And again, timing here, she wants to get this in front of the commissioners, but first she's got to get this in front of the legal and purchasing team. She would like to get this in front of the commissioners in their already scheduled workshop on 12/15. All right? So we had a good meeting, and Robbie, I'm glad you were there to become our staff liaison with them. So from here, if you could, continue that dialogue and help keep us informed. And when it comes to money like this, you can usually get me up here real quick.
All right, sounds good.
So,
That works.
anything you need me to do.
Okay, absolutely.
So, we're kind of at a point, I guess we kind of know what we want to do. I would like, because I do hear Tim, and this goes back to our first, second, and third meeting where we were really honed in on the control valve. And, that's something we could go ahead and encumber now. If Aaron, are you able to give an opinion on what, because this would be, let's say this will be used by money that, the $400,000 grant that we could potentially get in March and April. Could you give an opinion of what we would need to, what you think the town needs from maybe an engineering standpoint before we can put it out to bid for, proposals?
Yes, sir. So to be clear, I do want to clear up something I think I heard earlier. The 400,000 that was applied for was for a planning grant and for an AIA grant. So
Yes, sir.
neither one will be able to be used for construction costs.
Okay.
We will be able to do some of the planning, maybe even some of the design as part of those pieces as approved by the state, should you be awarded those funds. But none of those funds could be used for construction.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure that was
Is
clear.
is the valve considered construction?
The valve would be considered construction, yes, sir. So, now that's not the design piece, right? That would be part of the planning grant, that would be part of the master planning grant. I think we would be able to do that, but it wouldn't be able to physically turn the bolts, get a contractor on board. Those are for, that's for the modeling pieces, that's for putting plans together, specs, et cetera. Now, as far as what would be required on that project to get those to a contractor, Mr. Jones laid that out perfectly in that you would want to get somebody on board that would look at the feasibility of putting that at the interconnection. You'd want to look at the telemetry requirements at the elevated tank, since that control valve will be operated based on the level of the water in that tank. So the engineer would design those two pieces. They'd put together specifications, they put together drawings, and then you would bid that on the open market to a contractor.
So,
Excuse me.
No, go ahead,
While I have my thought, Mr. Bebson, the thought occurs to me because, at least in my own life, emergencies happen. I get flat tires, the battery's dead, motor won't crank. In the event of a failure of this technology, or maybe an extended power outage, this change that we're making is going to put us dependent on electrical devices where we're not right now. What would be our backup plan? Would this be set up in such a way it would revert back to our current system? Or would a human have to interact with it to make that happen?
That would be part of the design, yes, sir, and likely we would put a manual bypass valve in there so that you would close off the control. If the control valve were to malfunction and you realized the tank wasn't filling appropriately, like you would expect it to, you would go down there and open up a manual control valve to bypass that. A manual valve, isolation valve.
Not to be redundant, but as a reminder, we don't have technicians working for the town like Winston-Salem or Greensboro would, so having that Plan B in place with the necessary equipment plus the necessary directions or instructions, I think would be critical. And I just know how it is. I don't like being too dependent on computers and electronics on cars and equipment and what have you. So, it's great when it works, but when it doesn't, and so.
Absolutely. And we looked, you're 100% correct. And so we'd want to make sure that there were appropriate fail-safes in there that would alarm should it not be filling as expected. We'd also, we looked at doing that as a more passive approach based on pressure. And there's not enough significant difference to be able to operate it directly off of pressure.
Okay, and then back to our aeration system. Don't forget that. I'd like to pursue that at the same time as we are this pressure reducing valve. Just don't let us get waylaid with that, if you would, please.
So that would be an additional scope item.
and Tim, do we want to pursue that simultaneously with the pressure reduced valve? Or do we want to see if that potentially, if we install that, if that could potentially eliminate the need for that diffuser or aerator? At one time, if I recall, in the onset of these meetings, we'd kind of identified that diffuser or aerator is really, item A that we needed. And then after further dialogue and input from Aaron, he got, I inferred that the pressure reducing valve might be more important than the diffuser or agitator, and that could even eliminate the need for having that. But, Aaron, I'll look to you. I mean,
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I would say in the case of Stokesdale, an aerator could potentially be a benefit, right? And
It could be what?
Could be a benefit, depending on the level of THMs coming into the system, the certain time of year. An aerator has the potential to remove those or improve those issues
Well,
in the tank. However, the control valve would force turnover in the tank, which should potentially serve the same purpose. Lowering the water age in the tank is significant to reducing the THM issues and just water age in and of itself inside the tank. The way the system currently works, you often don't get enough demand in the town on an average day to actively turn the tank over as you would expect, and that's just due to sustained pressure coming from Winston-Salem. If you're using more than what's coming through the line, than what Winston-Salem is sending you, then the tank will empty as well, but otherwise it just really gets used what's in the pipes for the day. So the control valve, its function is to shut off flow from Winston periodically such that the tank provides the water to the town, requires it to, when I say tank turnover, it's really just a cycle. It would empty into the town. Then that control valve would open back up, allow the tank to refill, and you go through that cycle in any given day. And that
well,
process.
Mr. Bepson, I'm don't have the technical expertise that you have by any stretch of the imagination. It's just my layman's opinion that the aeration system was the sure thing. One of the things that I want to just express my concern about this is that from a layman's perspective, the aeration system seems to me like the sure thing based on dozens and dozens of these meetings I've attended and experienced with the town of Stokesdale. I've heard everything you said about the pressure reducing valve, but the thing that always kind of hangs up in my mind is we have no control over the quality of the water that Winston-Salem sends us. If it's has a high TTHM level, then there's nothing that we can do. It just seems like the aeration system, in my mind, is a benefit in the way of insurance. We have all this, I hate using this term, but for the purposes that we're discussing here today, we have all this free money coming from higher government because it's not free, it's taken away from somebody somewhere. But, we have those strict TTHM requirements, and I don't want to dance next to the cliff. If we can get solid engineering support that our opinion that we don't need it, then, I wouldn't want to put it in any more than anybody else does, but I just have a fear of getting us operating too close to the or exceeding those values if we're not careful. We don't have a full service water department. It's hard to afford one for 700 customers, ever how many we got. And so I want to be sure that we are taking the safe approach on these, in my opinion. So that you see what I'm saying? That's where I'm coming from.
I do, and if I could just add that, I think that would be part of that study, would be to look at the pros and cons of both systems, what the operating expenses are going to be for both systems, what the maintenance requirements would be, and then we could make more of an educated decision as we go through that. The aeration system, or any mixing system for that matter, is not something that we have looked at in the past. But we do feel like it's important to ensure turnover in the tank, and that's pretty typical for the operation of any storage system inside of a water distribution system.
Well, Mr. Ford, my answer to your question is yes to both at the moment, based on everything I know.
Okay.
Councilman Rigsby has joined us. Go ahead.
Well, with that, you know, saying we'd want to do both, Aaron, what would our next steps need to be to get that ball rolling there?
So
With
I
this,
would,
with this, and as an extension, would the same limitations, procedures involved with these two projects as it would with the greater extension project?
so I would suggest, first contacting your state representative to understand what the restrictions and requirements are of the grant. And if that is uniform guidance, first thing you would ask them and potentially the School of Government is about the exemption that you mentioned for Mini Brooks Act. So I think that's the first step. The second would be, if it comes back, which I expect would be that you would need to meet uniform guidance requirements, would be to issue the RFQ. I would suggest the scope of work of that is what has been developed here today. So the scope of work of that RFQ would be hiring an engineering firm to assess, design, and bid, help with the bidding process and the construction administration of the aeration system, the control valve, and the telemetry required for both of those systems, and also the extension around Coldwater Creek and 65.
Do we necessarily have to have the same folks do all those projects, or could we break out the 65 extension separately?
You absolutely do not have to have the same person do all those projects. In fact,
Thought it might make it easier to get somebody if we didn't have a big bundle of work.
right, you could potentially write the RFQ that suggested you would select multiple engineering firms, right? Is absolutely within your right, and that way you could issue one RFQ, but select multiple firms. And then you could work out that scope of work with those firms at a later date. But that would be well within your right. And that's just one potential suggestion. You could also do 2 RFQs as absolutely within your right. You could do multiple RFQs for each piece if you wanted. That would be completely up to the town.
Aaron, we're kind of going all over the place, so I'm going to go to this water line extension, pivot that area. You know, we have this hydraulic model with you guys. We haven't asked you to, but could you run that model and see what it will do to the entire system if we were to do that 3.5 or 4 miles or so, that loop that we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely you could. In fact, I think we may already have. I think it may be
Okay.
part of our original master plan. And
Okay.
it was just a suggestion that loops and water systems are great for water quality. So I think it was part of one of the suggestions we had made as a potential pipeline that could be installed in the future. If that's the case, then we've already looked at it.
Okay.
And I'll go back and try to confirm that. But I'm pretty sure that it was in there.
His US 158 in the Stokesdale side, we have an 8-inch line there. What's the thought on it? You know, is bigger better? Is 12 better than an 8 for this cold water loop? You know, if so, why? You know, what are the potential cost differences between a 12 and an 8? Is it, how significant is it, that extra 4 inches? Is there that much more labor? Is it just material you're paying for, you know?
Cost is a loaded question these days.
Would we ever need it?
That's a great question as well. That could all be answered based on the, I mean, there are some rules of thumbs and things that I could give you, but I would suggest that that could absolutely be answered for sure with the model.
Okay.
And I'd like to run that.
Did you do any, when you did your studies, the pipe coming out of Winston is 12-inch, correct?
I believe so.
The one coming from Winston.
I believe so.
Do we have any idea, I mean, we know that they're branching off of it and everything, so they're using some capacity. What capacity are we gonna have at our end, or are we gonna, you know, we get 300,000, I guess, a day now. What could we get out of that?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we're not gonna run out for some time, but, you know, down the road, is that pipe with their use gonna be big enough to supply Stokesdale? That's a big question. I don't know how much water you can get through a 12-inch pipe with, with them using it, and
Yeah.
plus we've gotta, have an agreement with them to, leave enough usage there for us. So, I mean, have you, in your studies, has that been studied, or is that something that's gonna need to be studied?
Yeah, it's not. It was looked at from a fire flow perspective, but that would be a modeling exercise and also a collaboration effort with Winston-Salem to see what their, expected use is in the future, what their build out is for that pipeline. And then what yours is as well, right? And to be able to look at those two things together. and
Would the
put them in
Winston-Salem system already have modeling information available for that an engineer such as yourself could readily read and pull that data for us?
Potentially.
I don't know how you folks
Potentially.
do this,
I know that they went through a master plan within the last few years. I think I'm going to assume that areas were out there that are out there were included in that master plan, but I can't. I have not seen the results of it, so I can't say with any amount of certainty. But I think so.
What I'd really like to know is if, on their plan, what did they plan? Did they plan any more for Stokesdale, or did they just keep us at the 300,000 gallon? I mean, they could be designing everything around that we're only gonna get 300,000 gallons.
Yeah, that's a great question.
That'd be the end of it,
That is a great question, and certainly something we could help you with. We've got relationships with Winston-Salem that we could reach out and.
Yep. One more question. If we start the design process, we don't have the grant yet that grant can only be used for design. Will we be able to go back retroactive and use that money to pay for something that we start now where we haven't got the grant now?
That is a great question, and something I will look into that.
Okay.
I'll look into that and get you an answer on that. I would say, for the Coldwater Road project, you already have that money encumbered. Well, you already have that money spoken for, not encumbered. I think that one could go, you could use some of those funds for the engineering around that pipeline. So that is a specific line that would be difficult to include in the $400,000 funds, right? I mean, the difference I'm making in the two projects is that for the control valve, it's a water quality measure. It's already been looked at. We need to do some additional planning around that, and that's what was submitted as part of that planning grant, and that's the reason it could be included. Mr. Forey referenced that money can't be used for extensions of lines or looking for additional, anything that is primarily for additional revenue, right? And so that it would be a little bit tougher for us to use the $400,000 for that design. Right. So now ultimately that's going to be worked out with the state, and they have the right to approve or deny whatever you intend to use that money for, and that's part of what the resolution that I think she needs for the $1.1 million that you were referring to. And it's really just saying this is what we intend to use the money for, and they get the right to say yes or no, and then you can move forward with those projects.
Yeah, and the resolution that was required, that was from Abby with the county.
No, I'm sorry.
Believe me, brother.
I'm confusing the Abby's and the Amy's.
No, you're good. But that's for the 3.1, and we need to do that. And Robbie will follow up on that tomorrow, and we'll need to do that in the near term. I think if you read the Rhino and other papers, there's the other municipalities are also having to pass resolutions on how they're going to use their ARP money. That, and the county would need to see that from us too. And they had, they had a strange recommendation, but apparently a lot of municipalities are doing this. Strange to me, but all this is strange to me. that they're just deeming it to be revenue replacement.
Yep.
And I said, well, it's not really revenue replacement. We don't get that much revenue to replace. I mean, that's like 30 years of revenue for
More
it.
than what we get, absolutely.
But she said, well, there's a standard deduction of a $10 million revenue replacement that all you got to, something to that effect. And as crazy as it sounded, people were doing.
Yep.
I don't know how to explain it, but she said.
That's a lot of people at that course that Ms. Thacker and I attended, they recommended that. I would say half of the course was how to report doing that method of using the money. That was their biggest recommendation. That was from the School of Government and the League were recommending towns to do that if they didn't already have projects in place. A lot of people already kind of had projects in place and they're just using this money, sliding it in and using it for the projects they already had in mind. But yeah, that revenue replacement was a huge push from them. Absolutely.
So, and I say that because, I mean, possibly at next week's council meeting, we need to adopt a resolution on how our ARPA money will be used.
What does council, what are y'all's feelings about putting a cap on these projects in some way, some fashion? If we get 3/4 of the way through some of this, and for whatever reason we experience cost overruns, there's a shortage of pipe out there, shortage of labor, now there's this pending shortage of diesel fuel supposedly. The reason I'm asking is I don't like putting the citizens in a position where we've started these projects thinking we have enough money to cover them and then have significant cost overruns for whatever reason, our fault, somebody else's fault, doesn't really matter. Is this council gonna be able to stop? I don't wanna get the citizens in a position where, you promised us you had sufficient funds to complete these projects, and now you're going to tax us unexpectedly to complete this. How do we guard ourselves from this?
We better know what we're doing before we get started.
I think that's a great question, an interesting question. I look at these big buckets of money in my head. I look at there being approximately $4.3 million for water projects. And then I look at there being $720,000 for other projects the town would want to do in accordance with ARP. And personally, as one council member, I'm a big advocate for that $720,000 piece to go towards park improvement. So I wouldn't want to spend more than that on the park, and I wouldn't want to spend more than that on water, the 4.2.
I thought we agreed to set half of that aside for use with the water system.
Well, I just said my opinion. I'm going to go to bat. I'm going to go to bat for to get the whole thing for the park. But
Well, okay, that's all well and good. I'm gonna be an advocate that we be able to stop if we can't accomplish these goals without taxing our citizens unexpectedly. If it
Once we
means
get
putting a
started-
plug on the end of a water line, so be it.
Yeah, that's my question is, once we get started, we get started and, at some point, can we just end the project and just leave it undone and leave 200,000-300,000 sitting on the table? Or do we
Well,
come up with the rest of the money to finish the project?
I'm willing to see some of it sent back to the state and the county if necessary, if it doesn't, the goal is to keep from burdening our citizens. Yeah, I would.
I would before I would cause a tax. I definitely would myself. But is there a provision where we could put certain percentage back for cost overruns? And then, I don't know how this money can be used, but, we've got $4.2 million, say 3.5 and leave a buffer. And, I don't know how you could do that.
Mr. Babson, is there a rule of thumb when planning these type of capital projects as far as a percentage to set aside for contingencies that is accepted in the industry?
No, you're getting out of my area of expertise in city planning. I would say you'll have I mean, you're gonna bid these projects, right? And they're gonna be hard bid jobs from contractors. You know that there are always change orders and there are always unforeseen conditions that could change those costs. But you're gonna have an idea, right? You might not take a project that runs all the way up against your available funds, right? There may be a conversation with a contractor, maybe you walk away, maybe you do a different portion of the project through value engineering, but because you get to bid these projects and you'll get the cost from the contractor before you start, you'll have an opportunity at that point to walk away.
Okay, then what I would say to council is, let's be mindful, we don't try to engineer our project to use every last penny. Don't be shy about sending some of it back if it keeps us in a comfortable budget.
I'll agree with that wholeheartedly. Aaron, would you feel comfortable ballparking? $3.3 million of water line, just ballpark.
Okay.
3.3 miles.
I would, not at this point, not in this bidding environment. I mean, it changes every day. I mean, I would be wrong if I told you, and my information is probably a week old. So I'm not walking away from the question, but it really is that volatile right now.
Well,
I believe it.
we're living in the highest inflationary period in 40 years. And I'm just asking that we be mindful of this, you know.
I don't think we've seen nothing yet.
What'd you say, Jimmy?
I said, I don't think we've seen nothing yet. You know, they're
That's
talking
what I
about
thought you said.
bombing Saudi Arabia and all this stuff, so, you know, we just have to plan the best we can. And, until we start digging ditches, we can always back up.
If I may, we'll also have the time during design, whatever the engineer you select, they'll be responsible for providing you engineer's estimates all the way through, design. And so, as good as they may be, right? I mean, again, still volatile, but we'll know, the further you get along in design, the more you know, the more precise you can get. So it won't be, it shouldn't be a shock on bid day, although prices have shocked us here lately, so. But you would have some ballpark idea at that point in time. So. But you'll still have that opportunity on bid day when you have the actual pricing from the contractors to know whether you have the available funding or not.
I would just want our contingency planning to take into account that we're in this high inflationary period. So wherein the practice in the past might have been an 8% contingency might have been reasonable. Now, you know, a 20% contingency might be reasonable. I don't know where we find the expert to nail this down for us, but I feel compelled to talk about this.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, and looking at the mileage, surely we have enough to get this. I don't know. To Aaron's point, this changes all the time, and what I once thought was a crazy figure might not only crazy high, might now be crazy low.
Well, let's don't fool ourselves, you know. I'm just saying we need to remember the economic cycle we're in here.
So just a thought on that. If we got on a project and we got, reasonably close, could we not use some of our town reserves to finish the project versus leaving it unfinished in the ground?
Legally, we could. Maybe I'm the eternal optimist, but with $4.3 million for water projects, and then we've got a couple, 300,000 that will be in the capital reserve fund in the water system, which, is designated for capital improvements for the water system. So, I mean, that money couldn't be used elsewhere.
Well, we've had a generation of people in Stokesdale that's, you know, saved that money up and, kept us a tax-free town. And I would hate for us to start a project and go into that money. That is what keeps us in good shape. I think we'll be okay too. We just gotta see. We just gotta see where, you know, how much we can get done and all that, but, I don't wanna be like the generation that spends mom and daddy's money, when we got it there as a buffer to enable us to run our government like we do. We're actually gonna start getting a little bit of better interest now, which inflation's gonna eat it all.
Well,
But,
we are though, Jimmy. We are getting better interest, and we're hoping that'll replace this lack of planning zone, or planning meeting revenue or zoning, which has been oddly low this year, but
yeah.
we are getting more than we budgeted, but. You know,
That is our buffer. That's our, you know, that's,
I hear all of council, and, my goodness, I don't want to dip into reserves either. But you know,
Well,
if we get to an area where we're 1,200 feet from connecting the system, quite frankly, I'm gonna vote to dip into
well,
reserves.
good Lord, folks, I'm just saying, let's plan in such a way that we have a contingency amount. And hey, if we have money left over and it goes back to the state or the county, why is that a sin versus putting us right up to the edge and having to deplete our reserves? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think we're probably all the same page. I don't think none of us wanna push it over the edge.
yeah.
You know, if we did get like 1,200 foot, I mean, we could always do something and then have a plan to put it back in.
Well,
If you had to, I wouldn't wanna do it, but
I don't know much about water mains, but I've been involved in construction budgeting and contracting for a very, very long time. And a fella is very foolish if he doesn't allow for contingencies with the unknown, with a construction type contract. Things will always go wrong.
Aaron, do you know, in government, there's design builds and then there's, at risk, I think, contracts. Do you know if those work with, how those work with water and all that? I know how they kind of work if you're building a building or a playground, you know, something. But, you know, what about water? Is that,
So we are seeing both construction manager at risk and design build delivery on water projects, water and wastewater projects around the state. They are, I would say they're very labor intensive on the utility side as well as you know, it's a great delivery method. But if you don't have somebody on the utility side that can be dedicated to following that project through, it could be very frustrating for council. So I'm not sure that this would be the project you'd want to dip your feet into that.
I don't know which one. Are you talking about construction at risk or the design build?
Really both, really both. There are different delivery methods from your traditional methods where a traditional method would be a design bid build method where
Okay.
that we're probably more familiar with
Actually,
here in
not.
Stokesdale, right? Where the engineer would design the project, they put together bid documents. You'd bid that project to contractors. Contractors would give you prices. You'd accept the most responsible and responsive bid on bid day. Enter into a contract directly with that contractor to the town, and then you would bid the project, right? So you would start with a number. Now, there are contingency items that could be related to unforeseen conditions, such as you hit rock, or you had a gas line you didn't know was there, you hit a sewer line, you know, not in this case, but, you know, I mean, that could be the case in other projects. So, you know, that's where those contingencies would come in on that design bid build. But you would have a hard bid number on bid day for that project.
Okay.
CMAR looks a little bit different where, CMAR being the construction manager at risk, where you would enter into a contract directly with the engineer and you would enter into a contract directly with the constructor. But they would work in tandem, usually somewhere between 30 and 60%. You would bring the contractor on, when I say 30 to 60% design, you'd bring the contractor on and then they work together through value engineering phases. Pricing, you know, you can feel a little bit better about pricing because it's coming from a contractor. They're able to talk to the suppliers. In North Carolina, the CMAR can't self-perform, so they would have to bid that out to other subcontractors to build it. So that's one of the struggles with CMAR in North Carolina, but it's absolutely a great delivery method. It's used quite a bit around the state. In this case, I'm not sure that it would be the best, just because it's a smaller water line. You could knock the design out pretty quickly, and you'd want that hard bid number from a contractor. Design build would be the process where you would hire the constructor and the engineer together. Usually the format of that would be to hire the contractor. Contractor would sub the engineer in that case, but you'd be hiring the team together. When I say it's labor intensive for the utilities, just you're going to have a direct relationship with the contractor, and they're going to need quite a bit of feedback pretty quickly because it's going to move fast. Sometimes you can put, oftentimes you can put an owner's rep in that position to help with that. And it would be another engineering firm or another contractor, et cetera, that would serve as that liaison between the utility and the design builder. But all great delivery methods for construction contracts. You know, we could bring somebody in that could talk about that much more eloquently than I and provide you more information, but if needed, I'm not sure that this project really sets itself up for that. I initially mentioned that this could be a possibility just because of the short timeline for design build, but everything that would have to go into place prior to that and the resolutions that would go into place that were required by procurement in North Carolina, it would have to move fast.
I realize it's not the Panama Canal or the Keystone Pipeline we're talking about here, but just while it's on my mind, can you speak to performance bonds and can we go about this in a way such that a bond company would actually would be in place to make us whole again should we have a failure with our primary contractor on one of these large projects?
Yeah, you would be required to have, by the state of North Carolina and procurement law, to have a performance and payment bond in place.
I know, but when they have to be used, are they enough? You remember some of these mortgage meltdowns, you know, like the banks used to make us buy mortgage insurance. Remember that, PMI? Mm-hmm. But yet we had all these loan companies going broke and the government having to bail them out. What happened to that premium? Why didn't it pay what it was supposed to? What went wrong? So I'm saying, who do we talk to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of performance bonds here? It's what I'm asking, because I don't know.
Yeah, you would want to talk to your town attorney about performance and payment bonds. That's going to be their realm.
Okay.
But yeah, you would want a bond from a bonding company that's reputable. That has
I want Lloyd's of London.
A good rating.
I mean, if they go broke, you ain't gonna get no money.
Well, I want Lloyd's of London then.
Yeah, so I would suggest talking to both the School of Government and your legal counsel.
All right. What kind of runway or timeline are we looking at here? You know, all right, say, I guess council will need to vote at some point, but say we vote and get to the point where we officially, as a governing body, want to do cold water 65 to Oak Level, that roughly 3.2 miles, roughly. Then we we issue an RFQ. By law, maybe this is for the attorney, but how long do you have to keep that open? And then and then we get our bids, and then the design takes place. I mean, you know, I feel like there's all this that we need to do, and in the back of my mind, there's still this June 30th deadline. And I know I need to talk to somebody, or Robbie needs to talk to that lady at the state, but
Yeah, I would suggest talking to your legal counsel, talk to the school of government, talk to the state. The exact time, minimum time requirements for advertisement, I can't speak to directly or accurately, but I think you can look at the state procurement website. It will have those, it'll have those dates on there. But I would suggest if you need to have an accepted bid in place by June 30th, you should be moving.
Glad y'all mentioned this point. In my travels about and conversations with various people, what I'm sensing out there is that there is, everything stopped during COVID, and then that kind of has passed, and everybody's trying to start up again. And then this ARP thing went into effect, and everybody's getting funding. And there seems to be quite a big shortage of professionals to do this work. How is it your sense across your industry that everybody has a backlog and there's more work than you can actually do? Or are we going to run into a problem with this, being able to get enough people to meet our deadline?
I think you'll get responses. Yeah, in general, I would say the engineering world and the contracting world is very busy. There's a lot of opportunity out there right now, but that doesn't mean that there's not firms available to respond to your RFQs, and I think you will absolutely get responses. You should put that deadline in the RFQ so people are well aware up front. But yeah, it's you'll get responses. But
Thank you.
Your senses are correct. To answer your question directly, is that I think everybody's pretty stressed with backlogs in the industry. Not to say that's really that much different than what has been over the last few years as well, but yeah, it's certainly the funding that's available has certainly stressed the available workload.
Do we have any more questions for Aaron? Any more comments? Any further discussion?
yes, if we're gonna continue to have these water meetings, Jim, what's a better time?
Probably 5:45.
7 o'clock.
You know, I
That
mean,
7 would be better, but yeah.
it's-
Y'all
15 minutes is not
y'all
gonna
are
make a
killing
lot
me.
of difference for anybody. 7 is 7.
Y'all are burning daylight in the afternoon for me.
You ain't gonna be burning it long
Listen, Duke.
this week,
Is,
but I'm
You-
fine,
you know, and-
I'm fine, whatever y'all wanna do.
yeah, I mean, if you prefer 7,
I mean,
I'm fine with whatever.
Is-
We can meet at midnight if you want to, I don't care.
Is 7 the reason why we don't have half these seats full? Probably not, but,
No,
More of a subject that matters.
but we do have, we have one citizen here, and he's the same citizen that's been showing up to attend these. and
Glutton
so
for
I'm just
punishment.
asking.
He'll come at midnight too.
I don't know. You know, I would, maybe, judging by our attendance at regularly scheduled town council meetings at 7, I would venture to say the time 5:15 is not a deterrent, but like I say, 7's good for me. I mean, want to be mindful of staff and, you know, potential vendors, but, you know, if you look at the meetings for what it was, I think we've been doing this 3 or 4 months now. I mean, I think they have been worthwhile, even though painful, but, I mean, we've had good discussion.
Well, I've had to miss 2, and I apologize for that, but I'm spread thin at times.
I make a motion that we change the Waterworks meeting time to 7 p.m.
Second.
You know, we can always make an adjustment if, let's say that we do have to have somebody that comes in and, you know, if there's a extenuating circumstance, we can always do, you know, like we've done.
Good, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Have to, so that's fine with me. Like I said, I don't care. We can do it midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever y'all want to do.
Any further discussion? Jim?
I have no discussion. Aye.
Derek? Jimmy?
Aye.
Mr. Foy? I'm sorry, Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Everybody was aye. And I am aye.
Well, you know, with extension of that, do you see the need in continuing to have these meetings on a as scheduled basis, you know, the drumbeat every 2 weeks? Or should we move back to, you know, special called workshops while they would still be at 7 o'clock? What does council think about that?
This has got to be done. I mean, June's going to be here before we know it.
Are we gonna put something together, for this next town council meeting to, you know, do those 2 projects we're talking about? I mean, that's, you know.
I don't see why we can't vote on those. I don't see why we can't.
If we don't have anything, we know, I think we know what direction we wanna go in. I mean, I don't know if anybody disagrees, we want those 2 projects. And I think we've landed on the Coldwater Road 65. So, but there's not a whole lot more to talk about there. But, you know, there is processes it's gonna have to be put in place. I don't know that, and we'll meet all we have, you know, we'll meet all we have to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
But I don't see, I don't know that we need to say we're gonna meet every week or whatever. If we don't have anything, you know, to add, I don't see any reason to do it. I'd be glad to do it. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I'll be here, you know, Lord willing, but, I mean, I think we're down to the process of starting to get some planning done and we won't actually be the ones.
Once we get to that stage, once we get to that stage, we're not needed.
It's be in the hands of the engineers and all that.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a, statement here. I am not receiving questions or concerns from the citizens out there that I come into contact with about the discussions and planning that we are doing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or if they know. And I'd like to ask the rest of council, or if you're receiving any questions or concerns to amount to anything from the citizens you speak to.
I have not.
I've had a little bit, but I've said this several times in our water meetings, that, I'd love to see people come in, that knew about the water system. I mean, we're on YouTube, and do it now before we start spending money. I mean, it's easy to say something after we start spending it. I wish you'd come in now, and if there's something else that somebody thinks we should do, come in with the information and let us look at it. And I think we're pretty good consensus about what we're talking about doing now. We haven't had anybody, the one thing that has been brought up to me by a citizen was the running the line down Hall River Road, that was a secondary source, which I've always argued the case it's not a secondary source. It's just another line in from Winston-Salem. I mean, it's neither here or there, but nobody's ever sold me on that. I've said it a couple times too. I said, somebody please come sell me on thinking about that, and nobody has. So I'm on board with what we're talking about doing, as long as we can get it done, within our cost. But I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'd be more, if they filled the place up, I'd be willing to sit here all night and listen to what everybody had to say. If nobody's gonna come say anything, then I have to go with what I hear and all that. But by no means am I a water expert.
Well,
Don't wanna be one either. But,
insofar as communicating with our citizens, we have our website, we have our Facebook page, we have Patty Stokes' paper, some of the other local media. I mean, are we going to have people that say, gee, we wish you'd have known when you were doing this because we wanted input. And so, that's why I asked the question, because it's odd that I haven't gotten any questions, I think, given the amount of money that we're contemplating spending and the length and breadth of the project. But I guess that in part, our citizens have gotten used to the town having a water system. And so a discussion to expand mains in one direction or another is really not that big a deal. But I think we just need to stop and ask ourselves, do they know or do they care? Are there questions they might have if they knew? So that's why I bring it up.
I don't think people are too worried about it. They want, as long as we got good water quality, they want good water quality. They don't want their prices to go jumping up, and they don't want a tax. So as long as we can stay within those guidelines, I think that we're probably in good shape. I mean, it's not like we're spending the money out of the bank. We're being given this money, and although it is coming out of somebody's pocket, our other option is to give it back and let them spend it somewhere else. And I don't think that would be very good common sense. That'd be cutting your nose off to spite your face, so.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just looking ahead to the town council meeting. I mean, I am ready to, I think we're at the point to talk about that we're, the culmination of these water workshops is for us to talk about projects, and I'm at the point where I believe we should talk about the, in the town council meeting, the cold water 65 Oak Level loop.
Maybe it would be prudent for us to put together some sort of little, I'll call it a press release for lack of a better term, indicating the funds that have been applied for that we're qualified for, when they have to be encumbered, where they're coming from, and what council's contemplating spending it on. I don't know. I mean, I'm okay if we do and okay if we don't, but I just don't like the idea of a group of citizens, saying that we weren't transparent or we didn't fully disclose what we're doing.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's I think that is a fantastic idea. Let's see, it's Tuesday. We can probably get it in the paper Thursday. We can get it on Facebook, get it on the website. I would be willing to write it up. Tim, what exactly do you want in there?
Well,
I mean, I could write it up, email it to council if council has a.
well, since you asked, sir, I think we need to have a description of each block of money that we've qualified for, starting with the 1.1 million. Here's what it is, here's who we're getting it from, here's the reason it's awarded to Stokesdale, here's what it can be generally used for, and here's the date that it needs to be encumbered, and go down the line one by one and list those, and then list the capital projects that we're currently contemplating spending the money on. And be sure that, we are letting the reader know that this is just a general overview that's subject to change.
And put why we're doing it, what the benefits of each project is. What it's gonna actually do for the water system. Because there's gonna be benefits to everything, all these projects that we're doing for water quality.
And otherwise, to pick on the news media for a minute, we'll have the news media kind of taking their own slant with it and, putting a story out there whether we agree with it or not. So that may be one way to, the citizens can get it straight from the horse's mouth here, as it were.
Okay, I think I've captured what you and Jimmy have said. One thing to put on there is council, I'd like to say council will be discussing these projects in the November, the 10th town council meeting. And an outcome would be that we could be voting to submit or present a RFQ to,
That's
to
good.
the field.
I
I mean,
thi- I
we're not
think-
voting to spend money yet, but we've got, one, we gotta decide what we gotta do, and we'll either do that next meeting or we won't, but we also gotta get that RFQ out.
That would give our citizens just a little snapshot of the consensus from these water workshop meetings, and, I don't want anybody out there, you know, any neighborhood, any group, any family, you know, potentially being upset that, you know, we didn't take their concerns into account. And so that just, I think that's
it's a
necessary.
fantastic idea, Tim.
Well, thank you, Mr. Foy.
So I'm gonna spend, I've got a meeting tonight at 8 o'clock, and I'm likely gonna spend a lot of time getting this done before I go to bed. If I email this to council, can council commit to, giving me some feedback by, noon tomorrow? Because Patty Stokes is gonna have a deadline to get this in her paper by Thursday. I'll call her to let her know this is coming, but,
Yeah.
If you-
Mr. Stevens, I think, has a question and wants to make
yeah,
a comment.
go for it, T.
Can you get, sir, if anybody that goes back and tries to listen to this will need you on the microphone.
Or just sit beside Robbie there. Yeah.
There you go.
We can hear you, but everybody else won't be able to.
Come on.
I think that's also a good idea to do the write-up with the summary.
Sir, if you would, identify yourself.
I'm T. Stevenson, 7900 Caraway, Stokesdale. I would agree with the idea of putting that synopsis in the paper. I would recommend too that we do define RFP for the general population that's not involved in public work or the bid process, that we know what that is.
Okay.
The other thing that I would think, I believe that the paper comes out this Thursday,
Yes.
and I don't know whether we could get something to her.
Well,
It might be,
Tonight.
You got-
Call her to let
okay.
her know it's coming.
that cycle may have to catch the next paper.
Yeah,
You know,
that's my thought.
We're not gonna favor one media source over another one here.
oh, certainly.
Yeah, okay, but the next paper you're right. Not favor one or the other. I got you. I'm gonna make sure yeah.
Generally, I hadn't sent out anything in a long time, but generally in the past, when something like this was going on, and I chose as a single council member to send something to the news media, I would copy the Northwest Observer, the Summerfield Scoop, the Rhino, and I've even sent it to the Greensboro Record, just so, I think in all fairness, that's what needs to be done. If there's a media outlet covering the area that is willing to receive it, then I think we need to send to it instead of, we need to be sure we're not favoring one media outlet
Right.
over another. Just
So
that
I would
simple.
like for Robbie to send it. I'll be happy to write it. I
Sure.
really need council's feedback, and Robbie, I'd like for that to go out by noon tomorrow.
Okay.
Damn, I got work to do.
You what?
T, you got anything else, my friend?
That's all for me, thanks.
I wrote down the things you said, the RFP, and I even wrote
Okay,
down
and-
RFQ.
And we're gonna put this on our website and on our Facebook page as well, guys, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll read it if I get it.
Any further discussion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Derek? Aye. Jimmy? Tim?
Aye.
And I am aye. Thank you all. Thank you all very much.
What's up, Mr. Aaron?